at a provincial level, if you have this federal program and direction, if everything's heading in that direction, how do you march in the other direction?
Right. So there's two aspects of your question, both like the legal, and then there's the political reality, the landscape. And they want to tax trucks, and it wasn't too long ago they wanted to tax the unvaccinated. Wouldn't it be great if a provincial government taxed the establishment media that was getting the Trudeau corporate subsidy? Like we just said, provincially, we know there's a federal issue. We can't stop the subsidization of the media from Justin Trudeau, but we're going to do a provincial tax on that corporate establishment media. That's in the new blueprint, and we're going to see how the media is going to like that. So there's two aspects to it. First of all, a lot of the stuff you're talking about, Rick, is provincial jurisdiction, and the only way the federal government can insert themselves is by transfer payments, right? And we got to have the willpower of a provincial government in Ontario, which PCs don't, to say we don't need the transfer payment. And if you're going to give us a transfer payment, we're going to send it out as tax relief. And that starts with getting Ontario's books in order, because Doug Ford is desperate for the transfer payments from Trudeau because he doesn't want to show a huge deficit. That's that. And so he's relying on the transfer payments federally to hide the fact that he's got a higher deficit than the Liberals did in 15 years. And so if you've compromised yourself or put yourself in a position of weakness, which Ford has done and the PCs have done, then you're open for Trudeau to come and cut a check, and you don't really have a leg to stand on. The other is political, guys. And I said this before, and I'm going to try not to make it too long, but cut me off if it's too long.
No, it's fine.
The Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, when they're in power, they get their seats out of Ontario. They don't get them in the West. And sometimes they get them in Quebec. They can't form a majority without majority of seats in Ontario. And when you've got a Doug Ford PC government, or any PC government, that now wants to not challenge the Liberals, but become their underhanded study or the wing of their party, you're now giving Trudeau carte blanche to say and do whatever he wants. Come down hard on the trucker convoy, come up with radical left-wing policies. And most Ontarians are relying on the provincial PC party and the premier, the PC premier, who has the biggest megaphone, or is supposed to have the biggest megaphone in the province, to say, is this a good idea or is this a bad idea? I can guarantee you that if Doug Ford actually had a backbone and some principle, and he called out Trudeau and said, I don't like this policy and I don't like that, or challenged it, or challenged the federal government, got the other premiers together, maybe not all of them, some of them, and said, we don't like this policy, Trudeau would have to respond because he needs the seats in Ontario. But by the PCs just becoming another Liberal party, whatever idea the Trudeau government comes up with, we don't hear any opposition out of the person with the biggest megaphone, Doug Ford. And that's how they're getting away with this stuff like a tax on trucks. Because if Doug Ford was out there saying tax on trucks, no way, they'd reel that back real fast, the federal Liberals, because they know that their voters in the 905, they like their trucks. And so we've got to balance the narrative. We've got to put a complete, comprehensive party in place in Ontario that calls out the other establishment parties provincially, but also the federal Liberals, to say, hey, that's a terrible idea. And you'll see how quick the Liberals will back off, just like the NDP was backpedaling on the critical race theory bill provincially. And just like it wasn't too long ago, it seems like a long time ago, but remember when Charest and Martin were balancing the budget federally? Well, it's not a coincidence that we had a pretty conservative government for the first 2 or 3 years in Ontario at the time with Mike Harris, and we had the Reform Party breakthrough. And so that was the federal Liberals looking at the landscape and saying, we can't be as far left as we want. And we've got to bring that back. We've got to establish political parties that are challenging the left-wing narrative and force the Liberals federally to look at the landscape differently. And they're not going to get away with every crazy idea they come up with.